Hello everybody, I'm back again with another G.I. Joe review, this time of Snake Eyes Declassified, a 6-issue miniseries plus a short story. Um, this is by Brandon Jerwa and art by, forget my mispronunciation, Emiliano Satachalucia and Robert Atkins. And the short story, it's a silent short story, is by Larry Hama, who did the breakdowns as well as the scripting. Um, and the finishing pencils were done by Ron Wagner. Um, Basically, from what I gather, what this book is about is um, GI, uh, the GI Joe comic book series from Marvel. Uh, they pretty much told Snake Eyes' origin throughout like the 200 issues of that series. As a result, it's very like kind of scattered and they little bits and pieces. And then they create this mini series years later, Devil Do. Essentially, it took all those little bits and pieces and put them together into a coherent story, and it sort of gives you like a general idea what Snake Eyes, like his backstory and everything, and how he came to be the masked ninja. Uh, that's in that we know and love. Alright, the basic plot is we start out with Snake Eyes' family. One thing I must say real quick, I like that they never give you Snake Eyes' actual name. I'm glad they at least keep that mystique about the character. Um, sorry, like the cat is like staring at me and he wants up here. Um, I was saying, basically he decides to join the military. His family's worried about him getting hurt, of course. Uh, and he and this is set during Vietnam War, so he's deployed to Vietnam, and what basically he joins his new unit. They don't trust him because they think something's off about him. Apparently, he earlier lost a lot of his friends, fellow soldiers, in an attack, and essentially he's afraid of growing close to people. This sort of becomes like a theme throughout the book with Snake Eyes, that he's worried that he's going to lose everyone close to him, like he's cursed. And basically, he ends up like he's surviving the war. He gets out because of his injuries, and I'm not sure what to describe as a spoiler and what's not. So I'm going to say this is a spoiler now. He basically gets back and he finds out his family died coming to pick him up from the airport, and it sort of sends him on a downward spiral and he essentially becomes an alcoholic and very angry person. And he meets this other guy, and they both kind of like develop a connection. Mostly also from their dislike how society, in their opinion, has fallen down by the wayside. And they sort of become like a vigilante group. However, for certain reasons, they end up, of course, having a falling out. Um, I'm gonna save who this guy is later, because it turns out I was surprised to find out he's actually an important character later on. But basically, what happens is, he sees how fucking, excuse my language. He sees how crazy his new partner is, and essentially they have a falling out, and it kind of makes him realize he has to put his life together. So he takes an offer up from his own army buddy, Thomas. Let me make sure I pronounce this right. Arashikage, who later on goes to be his arch rival and enemy later on in G.I. Joe, Storm Shadow. And basically, his friend Tommy as I like to call him in the book, decides he wants to help his friend, brings him into the ninja clan, even though members of the clan don't want him in because he's a foreigner, an outsider. And during that, we see his ninja training and all the conflict he does in it, and basically see him grow, and he starts to find more peace with himself, and he starts to grow close with the ninja clan family. And while that, Thomas, he's starting to feel pushed out, and he feels like he's being left behind as his friend is starting to excel in their training. Basically, they don't go much detailed their rivalry, but I think it's alright enough. And what ends up happening is basically, this is, again, I don't know what to describe as a spoiler and what's not, but I guess you could say this is a spoiler. An assassin hired by Snake Eye's former partner back when he was kind of like a vigilante, uh, attempts to assassinate him out of like revenge. Basically, ends up accidentally killing their master, and everyone thinks because he was killed with a bow, but it was an arrow similar to what Storm Shadow uses, Thomas. Thomas gets to blame, and he goes on the run. And basically, Storm Shadow essentially lost his master. Uh, his best friend, he thinks, kind of became a bad guy. And basically, he feels like everything's falling apart, and again, he thinks like that curse that everyone he cares about is going to die. Kind of starts affecting him. He leaves and goes and lives in the wilderness, like you do. he eventually becomes Grizzly Adams, but with a wolf, because the next part is basically the origin of his pet wolf, Timber. And then another old army by Stalker, who, if I remember correct, was like his commander. He comes in, asks him to join this new unit that they're putting together, which of course ends up becoming G.I. Joe. And this leads to him basically meeting Scarlet and the rest of the Joes. And this, like the last part, kind of focuses more on his developing relation with Scarlet, and it shows why he wears the mask and why he doesn't talk. Spoiler: it's because during a mission, there was an accident with a helicopter. He couldn't. Him and Scarlet got stuck in there. He saves her, but he's horribly injured and like he's disfigured and his throat's damaged, so he can't talk anymore. It is actually one of my favorite scenes. Is when he writes in the sand, Charlie CM Charlie Mike, which apparently is a real thing. It means carry on mission. Carry on the mission. And it was kind of cool. And basically, during this book, we also kind of see other characters developing, because I'm going to spoil this. This is the big spoiler. The guy who Snake Eyes is partners with was Cobra Commander. And when I saw that, I was like, what? And it's like, so he's connected to Storm Shadow, Stalker, and Cobra Commander, and another character later on. I'm like, is there anyone who he isn't connected to in his past? I just thought that was kind of funny. So many characters have a connection to Snake Eyes' past. Which I guess makes sense, seeing how he's the most popular Joe. The other character who shows up that kind of surprised me, and his inclusion actually makes me want to kind of read more up on the character. There's this guy who wants to learn how swordsmith, and he wants to meet the master there, who works for the Ninja Clan, who's going to be his apprentice in swordsmithing. And we find out that's Zartan, and he was hired by Cobra Commander to kill Snake Eyes. And during this, he ends up sort of like developing a love for the art of swordsmithing. So he actually kind of doesn't want to kill Snake Eyes, and wants to like truly become like this guy who makes swords for a living, like a metalsmith. He finds he loves it. However, this makes Cobra Commander use the whole like, oh, you were originally here to kill someone. I'm going to blackmail you and tell the guy who trained you this. I'm going to destroy all this. I won't do it unless you kill Snake Eyes. And due to reasons, he accidentally kills the wrong person, and basically it's a whole tragic thing. And this actually kind of made me interested in Zartan. I kind of do want to read more about him after reading this, to be honest. But yeah, I was just surprised. We're also seeing like Cobra Commander's origin a little bit, not like the whole thing, but a little bit. And it's like, I didn't expect that in this book. That thing I gotta bring up is the pacing's kind of awkward. I think I think I would enjoy this even better if I did read this over 200 issues. But again, this book is kind of an abridged that kind of puts everything together.
And that kind of works because, well, I can't afford 200 issues even in trade. I mean, you can get, sure you can find them somewhere, but it's like I'm that kind of guy who likes to read the physical material. I can read digital, but not that. I gotta really get into it to really read the digital stuff. Um, so I guess this is a good for a person like me who's getting into GI Joe and someone who can't track down 200 issues to get a whole story over little bits and pieces and doesn't want to read on Wikipedia. They actually want to experience the story. And it does have a character arc for Snake Eyes. He basically is a guy he's trying to fight the good fight. He becomes broken, and he essentially a lot of it's about him finding an inner peace and building himself up, and he becomes like the seasoned warrior, and who helps fight terrorism around the world against Cobra. It's not the most groundbreaking story, but it's a nice story. The art's pretty decent. It's not the greatest. Some of the fight scenes are alright. I will say the short story has some really amazing art. What was it called again? I can't remember, but it's apparently it takes place through issue 21 of Marvel's G.I. Joe series. Let me find it here. It's written by Larry Hama and arts by Ron Wagner. Let's see some. Yeah, this is good. Oh, this is kind of cool. This little source guide telling you where every kind of little thing came from what. And kind of tells you where they are now or at the time this is published. That's very useful. It's a Silent Prelude. Jason Jensen did some really good coloring work. But yeah, really good. And I recommend this book. I don't know if it's how expensive it is. I haven't looked up on Amazon or any other place that sells comics and trades. But I would say pick this up if you want an introduction to Snake Eyes, want to learn more about him, and don't feel like reading Wikipedia. Good place to start. Not the most amazing comic ever. And like I said, it probably would read better if you just read the actual issues, because this does kind of feel a little rushed in some parts, because they're essentially putting all this stuff together. But other than that, this is good, and this is perfect, like I said, for newbies like me. Well, I'll be back again later for more G.I. Joe reviews. Bye.